What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Welcome to the final video on if the Mijia 4K is actually worth getting. On Monday, we decided it was a pretty good little action camera. On Wednesday, we found out that while the GoPro Hero 6 Black does do better, it does so at over double the cost, which, you know, still leaves this in a pretty good spot. Well, today we're gonna find out how it compares to what I consider to be the best budget action camera around, the Yi Lite. You know, one of the reasons I mainly like looking at these cheaper cameras is not everybody wants to spend GoPro Hero 6 kind of money on hobbies, and I really do like that you are able to get decent quality cameras for decent prices these days. Like, the future is now. Like, I'm seriously shocked. But before we get into the video proper, let's talk about the basic specs of both cameras. The Yi Lite is a traditional GoPro clone camera with a Sony Exmor-R BSI sensor inside. It has a high silicon, basically cheaper, processor that can record in up to legitimately, it says 4K, but that's only at 20 frames per second. It can legitimately record 1080p at 60 frames per second. The Xiaomi Mijia, on the other hand, is also a GoPro style clone, which has an Barella processor, what used to be in GoPros, and it can record in up to 4K 30 frames per second. Battery life on both is reported to be very similar, with both getting roughly 2 hours of recording life each. Physically, they are both shaped like the GoPro clones they are. The Xiaomi is a little bit longer and thinner than the Yi, but both of them aren't drastically different than each other. They're both pretty darn similar shape-wise. I will say the Mijia feels more robust than the Yi. One of the things that I've never liked about the Yi Lite is how cheap it feels. I mean, both are made of plastic, but the Yi Lite feels way less durable. We'll talk about that more here in a second. Okay, we've got the basic specs out of the way. It's time to get in the part of the video where things get real. Longtime viewers know, but I have 5 dimensions that I think you've got to hit in order to be a useful action camera, and not just some fish-eye distorted tiny point and shoot. I lovingly call them the pillars of action. I love saying that. A quick rundown of these pillars are ease of use, durability, compatibility with GoPro style mounts and accessories, decent image quality, and stabilization. If you build your camera around these 5 pillars, you can call it an action camera. Boom. I'm just dropping the mic on that. First up, ease of use. Like we mentioned earlier this week, with as small as action cameras are, the real way manufacturers have found to allow us to change the settings in a reasonably easy way is through touchscreen interfaces. The Mijia's touchscreen is slightly larger than the Yi, and you know, it works perfectly well. You can change the frame rates, recording modes, and you have some slight control over the image quality while recording. The Yi, on the other hand, has my second favorite touchscreen interface of all time. It works really well. It's second only to the GoPro. Just like the Mijia, you can change most of the same settings, but the Yi is snappier and a little bit quicker to respond. But which is better? I personally like the Yi's interface. It's simple, quick, and it just works. Next up, durability. Durability is so important, I will fail an action camera at this step straight offhand. Hint, Yi Discovery. And unfortunately, neither of these cameras score very high in the durability department. First off, neither is waterproof without a case, and neither camera comes with any kind of case to make up for that. Especially clone action camera companies include cases. It's like $2 additional for you, and if you want me to pay the $2 additional, I will gladly pay it to make sure I can actually go out and use these cameras in a rugged environment. In the interest of the video, I will give this category to the Mijia overall, as the body of the Mijia feels more substantial than the Yi. Like I mentioned earlier, the Yi feels cheap and plasticky, so I'll give build quality points, I guess, to the Mijia. Neither really does well in this category. Number 3, compatibility with GoPro style mounts and accessories. Both of these cameras are pretty standard GoPro type clones. They are shaped to perfectly fit into GoPro mounts and accessories, and I'm happy to state that it works. Congratulations, you made a boxy camera. They totally fit into boxy accessories. Additionally, they both have something that I really like, and that's a 1/4-inch tripod mount on the bottom. One of my biggest irritations with the GoPro line in general is you have to then adapt back to regular camera gear, and sometimes you, and by you I mean me, you know, you forget the cases or you forget the little adapter pieces. Well, then you are pretty hosed when you want to use regular tripod / camera gear. But this is a pretty square draw for both cameras. Like I said, they're both shaped, you know, nearly identically. Pillar number 4, decent, not perfect image quality. Now here's where there will be a little more separation, and the biggest reason for that is pretty simple. The Mijia can record in 4K 30 frames per second, 2.7K 30 frames per second, and the Yi Lite can only really go up to 1080p 60 frames per second. Now I personally think that the 1080p 60 frames per second is just about the perfect recording settings for action. I think it gives everything a very natural look. I mean, 30 frames per second is okay, but it's not as good, mainly if there is fast action involved. Both cameras have decent looking image quality, quality, and I think they look pretty darn good for the price. These cameras are around $100, and they really continue to surprise me. The Mijia actually does better in low light than I think a tiny censored camera has any right to do. Surprisingly, it's good. And this is a low light / audio test of the two cameras. So like the Wednesday video, this is the exact same setup that you just saw with my Sony a7 III, but we've got the two action cameras set up instead. So neither's gonna be doing that great because the small sensor just, you need as much light as possible to make the image quality look good. However, I have been surprised at how good the image quality out of the Mijia 4K. The Yi Lite does perfectly fine. Also, my big problem with the Mijia, and you might be hearing it right now, I don't actually know because it is super inconsistent when it comes to the audio. Sometimes, like in the Monday video when I was talking to it, it was peaking a lot. I was having real problems controlling the audio, and there's no internal audio control on the camera, so you don't know whether your audio is good or not until you're checking the video afterwards, which is pretty tough. The Yi Lite has always had good audio. I enjoy the audio coming out of it. The Yi Lite also has an HDMI port, whereas the Mijia does not. So you just gotta balance those two things. So real quick, this is the audio out of the Mijia 4K, audio test 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the audio out of the Yi Lite, audio test 1, 2, 3, 4. You can kind of see how the two work together. Okay, back to the pillars of action. I totally just blew the audio out of the Mijia. And finally, but certainly not least, stabilization. And this is actually an incredible part to this video. This is a budget camera comparison, and both of these budget cameras have functional electronic image stabilization built in. And that's not something you generally see from lower end action cameras. Seriously, most of the action cameras you're gonna find for budget are not gonna have usable electronic image stabilization. That's not gonna be groundbreaking levels of stability, but both do a really impressive job of taking little shakes and hand jitters out of your video while recording. My main problem in this category, however, is the Yi Lite. When the EIS is turned on, there's almost this like additional fisheye distortion included, and while it's not a deal breaker, I'd prefer just to use it in a gimbal and not have to use the EIS on the Yi, because it takes a shake out, but it makes the image look weird. So what, right? So which of these budget cameras come out on top? In my opinion, it's really close. I think the Yi Lite has slightly better 1080p video, better audio, and costs about $30 less. Sometimes more if you can find them on sale. The Mijia, on the other hand, has more frame rate options, can record in 4K, and has better stabilization and low light. I think both are pretty darn good for the price, and both are close enough that I think it will come down to which of the features I just mentioned that you need more. Neither is a bad choice. They're both pretty great. Thanks for watching.